Lieutenant Ryan Bennett had exactly 2 seconds to decide whether a stranger lived or died. The first shot cracked across the ballroom like a whip, and while 300 people in tuxedos and evening gowns dropped screaming to the marble, one man moved toward the gunfire. He didn't think. He didn't pray. He drove his shoulder into a billionaire he'd never met and put his own body between her and the bullet meant to end her. But here's what nobody in that room knew. Not the CEO he was about to save, not the 4 killers closing in, not even his own 8-year-old daughter waiting at home with the porch light on. This single act of courage would drag a grieving Navy father into a war he was never supposed to survive. Before we begin, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. And if you still believe real heroes walk among us, subscribe and follow the channel. This one's for you. The shot came at 9:47 p.m., and by 9:49, Ryan Bennett had already broken 3 men and saved a life. But to understand how a widowed Navy lieutenant ended up bleeding on the floor of the most exclusive charity gala in the state, you have to go back 12 hours to a cramped kitchen that smelled like burnt toast and cheap coffee. "Dad, you're doing it wrong again." Ryan looked down at the lunchbox in his hands, then at his daughter who was sitting at the counter with her arms crossed like a tiny drill sergeant. "I'm doing what wrong?" "The sandwich. You cut it in triangles. Mom always cut it in rectangles." He froze for half a second. Just half. Then he made himself smile. "Since when do you like rectangles better?" "Since always. Triangles get soggy in the middle." "Triangles do not get soggy in the middle." "Prove it." "Emily, I don't have time to prove the structural integrity of a peanut butter sandwich to an 8-year-old. "That's because you know I'm right." He set the knife down, leaned across the counter and looked at her. Really looked at her the way he'd promised himself he would after Sarah died, because he'd learned the hard way how fast you could lose the chance. Emily had her mother's eyes. Same brown, same stubborn spark. Some mornings that spark was the only thing that got him out of bed. "You know what you win. Rectangles from now on." "Thank you." She said it with the dignity of a woman who'd known she was right the whole time. Then quieter. "Are you really going to a party tonight?" "It's not a party, it's work." "You said parties were work when you told me the Navy sent you to Bahrain." "That's different." "How?" He handed her the lunchbox. "Because tonight I'll be home by midnight, I promise." She held out her pinky. He hooked it with his. It was a small thing, that pinky, but in their house, it was law. In their house, a promise wrapped in a pinky was stronger than any oath he'd ever sworn to the United States Navy, and he'd sworn plenty. "Midnight," she said. "Midnight." Call. The job had come to him through an old buddy, Marcus, who ran a private security outfit and owed Ryan about 100 favors from 100 bad nights overseas. "It's babysitting rich people," Marcus had told him on the phone. "Charity gala. Big money, big egos, big donations. You stand in a corner in a suit, you look scary, you go home. $600 for one night. $600 to stand in a corner. To stand in a corner and look scary. You've got a very scary corner-standing face, Bennett." Ryan had laughed, but he'd taken the job before Marcus finished the sentence. $600 was a month of Emily's tutoring. It was the difference between the good winter coat and the one that was already too small. When you're a single father on military pay, $600 isn't money, it's a lifeline. "One more thing," Marcus had added, and something in his voice had shifted. "The client requested extra hands last minute. Their in-house team's handling the principal, but they wanted overflow. You won't be near the VIPs, you'll be perimeter. Boring stuff." "Boring is fine. Boring is what we want." Ryan should have noticed it then, the way Marcus said the client requested extra hands last minute. In 15 years of reconnaissance work, Ryan had learned that the word last minute was rarely innocent. But that morning all he could think about was rectangles and winter coats and getting home by midnight. He wasn't a soldier that day. He was just a dad trying to make a dollar stretch. Ew. The Ashford Hotel was the kind of place that made men like Ryan feel their own boots were too loud. Chandeliers the size of small cars. Waiters gliding past with trays of things Ryan couldn't pronounce. He tugged at the collar of the rented tuxedo and found Marcus's contact a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and an earpiece who introduced himself as Devlin Head of the client's security detail. "You Bennett?" Devlin asked, looking him up and down. "That's me." "Military." "Navy, 15 years. Devlin nodded, but it wasn't a warm nod. "Good for you. Here's how tonight works. My team runs the principal. You and the other overflow guys run the doors, the coat check, and the parking overflow. You do not approach the VIP tables. You do not engage guests unless they engage you. You see a problem, you radio me. You do not act on your own. Understood?" "Understood." "I mean it. This isn't a war zone. We do things by the book here." Ryan kept his face flat. "Whatever you say." But as Devlin walked away, Ryan's eyes were already moving, not because he wanted them to, but because after 15 years, they just did. 2 exits on the east wall, one of them propped open with a folded napkin. A service corridor with no camera coverage. 4 of Devlin's men all clustered on the same side of the room, all watching the crowd, and none of them watching each other's backs. And the metal detector at the front entrance, the one that had beeped twice while Ryan watched, and been waved through both times. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself he was a corner stander tonight, not a reconnaissance man. He told himself to think about the $600. He almost believed it. The guest of honor arrived at 8:30. Ryan knew who she was before anyone announced her because the whole room turned like flowers toward the sun. Victoria Lawson, 39 years old, founder and CEO of Lawson Dynamics. A technology company that had done something with encryption Ryan didn't fully understand, except that it had made her one of the most powerful women in the country, and apparently one of the most hated. She walked in wearing deep blue chin-high, smiling the practiced smile of someone who'd learned to look comfortable in rooms full of people who wanted something from her. Ryan watched her the way he watched everything cataloging. Confident stride. Good posture. But her eyes flicked to the exits twice in the first 10 seconds. That wasn't the look of a woman enjoying a party. That was the look of a woman who was afraid. Not your job, he reminded himself. A young waiter passed him carrying a tray, and Ryan noticed the man's hands were shaking. The glasses on the tray trembled. Ryan noticed, too, that the waiter's shoes were wrong, heavy-soled black, the kind you could run in. Not the thin patent leather every other server wore. Not your job. He keyed his radio anyway. "Devlin, Overflow East Side. You've got a server near the North Bar, dark hair, heavy boots. Might want to look." The radio crackled. "Negative. Stay off comms, unless it's an actual issue. Boots aren't an issue." Ryan clenched his jaw. Copy. For the next hour, nothing happened, and Ryan hated it. Because in his experience, nothing happening was exactly what happened right before everything happened. He kept drifting closer to the main floor, even though he'd been told to stay on the doors. He couldn't help it. Something in the room was wrong, and every instinct he'd buried under a tuxedo and a dad's routine was clawing its way back to the surface. He found himself near the edge of the VIP area when Victoria Lawson broke away from a cluster of donors and nearly walked into him. "Oh, sorry," she said, then stopped, looked at him. "You're not one of Devlin's men." "No, ma'am." "Overflow." "Overflow." A small, tired smile. "That's a polite word for extra body." Something like that. She studied him with the sharp attention of someone used to reading people for a living. "You've been watching the room, not the crowd, the room, the doors, the corners. Why?" Ryan hesitated. He wasn't supposed to engage. "Habit." "What kind of habit does that to a man?" "The Navy kind." Something in her posture eased just slightly, like a person who'd been holding her breath and had just found a reason to let a little of it out. "How long?" 15 years. And they've got you standing by a door." "They've got me exactly where they want me," Ryan said. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Victoria." "And yes." "Are you expecting trouble tonight?" The smile disappeared. She glanced over her shoulder, that same flick to the exits, and lowered her voice. "Why would you ask that?" Because you keep looking at the exits like you're planning which one you'd run to. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then, very quietly, "There have been threats. My company is finishing something. Some people would prefer we didn't. My board says the threats aren't credible. My security says the venue's locked down." She let out a breath. "But you've been in this room an hour, and you already found something they missed. Haven't you?" Ryan didn't get to answer, because that was the moment the lights went out. It happened the way real violence always happens, not with a scream, but with a sound. A single clean crack. Ryan had heard that sound in Fallujah and in Aden and in a dozen places he tried never to think about, and his body reacted before his brain finished the thought. He grabbed Victoria's arm and pulled her down. "Get down, down." The second shot came before she hit the floor, and it went exactly where her head had been half a second earlier. The room detonated into chaos. 300 people screaming, scrambling, trampling each other toward exits in the sudden dark. Ryan's hand was already on the back of Victoria's neck, pressing her flat. "Stay down. Don't move. Do you understand me? Do not move." Oh my God, they're... "Look at me." His voice was calm. Impossibly calm. It was the calm that had gotten him through the worst nights of his life. "You're going to live through this, but you have to do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good." The emergency lighting flickered on, dim, red-tinged. And in that hellish half-light, Ryan saw them. 4 men. Moving in a coordinated wedge through the panicking crowd. Not random. Not smash and grab. Trained. The lead man had the waiter's face, dark hair, heavy boots, and now the tray was gone, and there was a compact submachine gun in his hands. Ryan clocked the formation instantly. 2 shooters, 1 flanker, 1 rear guard. They weren't there to rob anyone. They were there for one person, and she was pinned under Ryan's arm. He heard Devlin somewhere in the dark, shouting into his radio. And then he heard the wet final sound of Devlin stopping. Ryan didn't have a weapon. He had a tuxedo, a lifetime of training, and about 11 feet between Victoria and a man who was going to kill her. "Listen to me," he whispered. "When I move, you crawl. That way toward the service door. Stay low, stay behind the tables, do not stand up. Go now." "What about you?" "Go, Victoria, now." He didn't wait to see if she obeyed. He rose from behind the overturned table and did the thing that every survival instinct in the human body screams against. He ran at the guns. Moig. The lead shooter never saw it coming. In his experience, and men like him had experience, civilians ran away. Civilians froze. Civilians curled into balls and begged. Nobody ran toward a submachine gun in a tuxedo with empty hands. Ryan closed the distance in 3 strides. His left hand shot up and drove the barrel of the gun toward the ceiling, just as the man squeezed the trigger, and a burst of rounds stitched harmlessly across the chandelier, raining crystal. With his right hand, Ryan delivered the heel of his palm into the man's throat, with 15 years of muscle memory behind it. The shooter dropped gagging, and Ryan ripped the weapon from his hands on the way down. 2 seconds. 1 man down, 1 gun acquired. The second shooter turned, bringing his weapon around, and Ryan didn't give him the room. He drove forward, jammed the man's arm to the side, and put 3 controlled rounds into the meat of his shoulder and thigh. Not to kill, but to drop. Even now, even here, some part of Ryan refused to become the thing he was fighting. The man screamed and went down, clutching his leg. 2 seconds more. 2 down. The flanker had time. He raised his weapon and swept it toward the tables where Victoria was crawling, and Ryan saw the line of fire before the man did. He hurled himself sideways, taking the burst across the room, and 1 round punched through the outside of his left arm, a hot white line of pain he'd feel later, but didn't feel now. He returned fire on the way to the ground, and the flanker folded. 3 down. And searing agony blooming through his arm that he simply refused to acknowledge. That left 1. The rear guard, the smart one, the patient one, had pulled back and drawn a pistol, and he had it pressed against the temple of a sobbing woman he'd dragged up as a shield. He was backing toward the service corridor, and his eyes were locked on Ryan with a professional's cold assessment. "Drop it," the man said. His accent was flat, careful. "Drop it, or I paint the wall with her." Ryan didn't drop it. He kept the acquired weapon leveled, his breathing slow, his bleeding arm steady against every law of the body. "Let her go." "You're good," the man said. "Too good for hotel security. Who are you?" "I'm the guy who's going to give you one chance." "You won't shoot. You'll hit her." "I've made harder shots than this with worse light and less reason." The woman was shaking, weeping, and Ryan looked at her, really looked the way he'd looked at Emily that morning, and in the smallest voice he mouthed a single word: "Down." She understood. God bless her, she understood, and she went limp, dropping her whole weight out of the man's grip, and in the half-second of clear air, Ryan fired once. The rear guard hit the floor before he understood he was falling. 4 down, in under 2 minutes, by one man with a bullet in his arm and a pinky promise waiting at home. The room went utterly, impossibly silent. Then the sound came back all at once, sobbing, moaning a woman's hysterical laughter, someone whispering, "Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!" over and over. Ryan stayed exactly where he was, weapon still up, scanning, counting, checking corners. Because the first rule his instructors had drilled into him was that the last man down is never the last man. You clear the room. You always clear the room. "Bennett." A voice, one of Marcus's overflow guys, stumbling out from behind the bar, face white as the tablecloths. "Bennett are they?" "Get to the doors," Ryan said, not lowering the weapon. "Lock them. Nobody in or out until police clear the building. Go." "But, go." The man went. Ryan finally let himself breathe. And when he turned, Victoria Lawson was standing there, not crawling, not hiding, but standing 20 feet away, staring at him with an expression he would remember for the rest of his life. It wasn't gratitude. It was something deeper and more disturbing. It was the look of a woman watching the exact moment her entire understanding of the world rearranged itself. "You," she said. Her voice cracked. "You saved—" She couldn't finish it. "Are you hurt? You're bleeding." She rushed forward, pressing a cloth napkin to his arm before he could stop her. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold it. "You're bleeding. Sit down. You have to sit down." "It's a graze. I've had worse." "That's not a thing people say, that's not." She was near tears, or maybe past them. "You ran at them. I saw you. You ran at them. Nobody runs at them. Why would you—" She stopped, swallowed. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." Ryan held her gaze, and the answer that came out of him wasn't heroic or grand. It was just true. Because somebody had to. The police arrived 4 minutes later, followed by paramedics, followed by the kind of chaos only a mass casualty event in a room full of wealthy, connected people can generate. Ryan sat on the edge of an overturned chair while a paramedic wrapped his arm, and he answered questions in the flat, economical way of a man who'd given 100 debriefs. "Sir, can you describe what you saw? What?" "4 hostels, coordinated entry. Lead man posed as catering staff, dark hair, heavy-soled boots. I flagged him to the security chief an hour before it happened." The detective looked up. "You flagged him to who?" "Head of the client's detail, man named Devlin. He told me to stay off comms." The detective wrote that down slowly. "And where's Devlin now?" Ryan looked toward the corner where the coroner's people were working. "He didn't make it." The detective followed his gaze, and his face changed. "You're telling me the client's own head of security, a professional detail, got taken out, and you, an off-the-books overflow guy standing by a door, put down all 4 attackers by yourself." "That's what I'm telling you. With no weapon. I took theirs." The detective set his pen down. "Son, I've been doing this 22 years. I've never seen anything like what happened in this room tonight. With respect, sir," Ryan said quietly, "you've never met the men who trained me." Chai. It was nearly midnight when they let him go, and the first thing Ryan did before he called Marcus, before he spoke to the reporters already gathering outside like flies, before he even let himself feel the pain, now roaring up his arm, was pull out his phone and dial home. His neighbor Grace, the retired school teacher who watched Emily on his work nights, answered on the first ring. "Ryan." "Oh, thank God we saw it on the news. Are you?" "I'm fine, Grace. I'm okay." "Is Emily?" "She's right here. She wouldn't go to bed," she said. Grace's voice wavered. "She said her daddy Pinky promised he'd be home by midnight, and her daddy never breaks a pinky promise." Ryan closed his eyes. The steel that had held him together for 2 hours finally cracked just a little. "Put her on." A rustle, and then the small voice that was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Dad?" "Hey, kiddo." "You're late." He looked at his watch. 11:58. "I've got 2 minutes. Are you okay? The TV said there was shooting." "I'm okay, I promise." "Pinky promise." His throat tightened. "Pinky promise. I'll be home before you know it. Now go get in bed. I want you asleep when I walk in that door." "Okay." A pause. "Dad?" "Yeah. I'm glad you cut the sandwich in rectangles." He laughed, a real laugh, cracked and wet and alive. "Me too, baby. Me too. Go to sleep." He hung up and stood in the wreckage of the ballroom, one arm bandaged blood on his rented tuxedo, and for a moment he let himself simply be a father who'd survived to keep a promise. Victoria found him before he could leave. She'd wrapped a coat around her shoulders, and her makeup was ruined, and she looked for the first time all night like a real person, instead of a magazine cover. "They wouldn't tell me your name," she said. "The whole night, and nobody would even tell me the name of the man who saved my life." "Ryan. Ryan Bennett. Ryan Bennett." She said it like she was memorizing it. "I owe you a debt I can't ever repay." "You don't owe me anything, ma'am. It's just what I do." "It's not just what you do. It's what you chose to do." She stepped closer, and her voice dropped to something raw and unguarded. "Do you understand what happened in there? 4 trained mercenaries got past a professional security team, past metal detectors, past cameras, and the only reason I'm standing here is that a man who was hired to watch a door saw everything they missed." She shook her head slowly. "That doesn't happen by accident, Ryan. Men like that don't get into a room like this without help." Ryan had already thought the same thing. He'd thought it the moment the metal detector waved through the second beep. He'd thought it when he saw all 4 of Devlin's men clustered on one side. He'd thought it when the last-minute request for overflow suddenly made a colder kind of sense. "You're right," he said. "This was an inside job. Somebody opened the door for them. Then somebody in my own circle wanted me dead tonight." The 2 of them stood there in the ruined ballroom, and the weight of that sentence settled over both of them. "Ma'am," Ryan said carefully, "I did my job tonight, but my job is over. I've got a daughter at home, and I've got orders to report back to active duty in 6 days. Whatever this is, whoever did this, that's for the police now. I'm just a guy who stood by a door." Victoria looked at him for a long moment. And then she said the thing that would change everything. The thing that would pull him and his little girl into the deepest fight of their lives. "You're not just a guy who stood by a door, Ryan Bennett. You're the only person I've met tonight I can trust. And I think before this is over, I'm going to need you a lot more than you need me." He drove home in his own beat-up truck at midnight, arm-throbbing, mind-racing, and he told himself it was finished. He told himself he'd take his $600, which God would they even pay him now, and he'd forget this night ever happened. He'd report to active duty. He'd cut sandwiches into rectangles. He'd keep his promises. That was the life he wanted. That was the only life he wanted. But Ryan Bennett had spent 15 years learning to read the ground before he stepped on it, and every instinct he had was screaming that tonight wasn't an ending. It was a first shot. And first shots were always followed by more. He pulled into his driveway. The porch light was on the way. Emily always left it on for him. Through the front window, he could see the small shape of her curled asleep on the couch in her rocket ship pajamas, having lost the fight to stay awake despite all her determination. She'd waited up as long as her little body would let her. Ryan sat in the truck for a moment, hands on the wheel, and let himself finally feel all of it. The fear, the fury, the pull of a threat he could feel, but not yet see. Then he wiped his face, put on the calm he always wore for her, and went inside to carry his daughter to bed. He didn't know it yet. But the 4 men in that ballroom had only been the beginning. Somewhere out there in an office he'd never seen, powerful people were already learning a name they hadn't expected to learn: Ryan Bennett. And they were already deciding what to do about the Navy father who'd ruined everything. And in 6 days, when he was supposed to report for duty, Ryan wouldn't be on a ship. He'd be fighting for his daughter's life. But that night, all he did was lift her gently off the couch, feel her small arms wrap around his neck in her sleep, and carry her down the hall. She stirred just enough to murmur one word against his shoulder. "Rectangles." "That's right, baby," he whispered. "Rectangles." He laid her down, pulled the blanket to her chin, and stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, the one thing in the whole world he would burn everything down to protect. Then he touched the bandage on his arm, and he understood, with the cold certainty of a man who'd been to war and back, that he was about to have to. 3 days after the shooting, Ryan Bennett still hadn't slept a full night, and it wasn't the pain in his arm that kept him awake. It was the phone. It started ringing the morning after the gala, and it hadn't stopped. Reporters, producers, a woman from a morning show who called him the hero dad and asked if Emily would come on television. Ryan turned every one of them down the same way, with the same 6 words. "I've got nothing to say. Goodbye." But there was one call he didn't turn down, because the number on the screen was one he'd have known anywhere by then. He'd stared at it enough in 3 days. "Bennett," he answered. "It's Victoria." A pause. "Is this a bad time?" "It's always a bad time, ma'am. What do you need?" "I need you to come to my office. Today, if you can." Ryan pinched the bridge of his nose. He was standing in his kitchen cutting a sandwich into rectangles, Emily's lunchbox open on the counter beside him. "Victoria, I told you at the hotel. I did my job. My part in this is over." "I know what you told me." "Then you know I've got a kid to get to school and orders to report to active duty in 3 days. Whatever's going on with your company, that's between you and the police." "The police," Victoria said, and her voice went flat and hard. "Closed the case this morning." Ryan's hand stopped over the sandwich. "Say that again." "They're calling it a robbery gone wrong. 4 armed men, a high-value target, a security failure. Case closed. They arrested nobody who wasn't already lying on my ballroom floor, and 3 of the 4 survivors won't talk, and the one who might talk somehow died in the hospital last night of a heart attack." She let that word hang. A 29-year-old mercenary. A heart attack. Ryan set the knife down slowly. Every instinct he had, the ones he'd spent 3 days trying to bury, came awake at once. That's not a robbery. No, it isn't. But that's the story, and it's a very clean story, and clean stories don't happen by accident any more than trained killers walk through metal detectors by accident. Her breath came shaky over the line. "Ryan, I have been sitting in my office for 3 days trying to figure out who in my own life wanted me dead badly enough to pay for it, and I don't have anyone I can talk to about it. Not my board, not my executives, not my own security, because my own security is the reason 4 men got into that room. You're the only person on this earth I know for certain didn't want me dead, because you're the only person who ran toward the bullets instead of away." Ryan looked at his daughter's lunchbox, at the rectangle sandwich, at the little folded napkin he'd tucked inside with a heart drawn on it, the way he did every morning. "I'm not a detective, Victoria." "No. You're something better. You're a man who noticed everything a room full of professionals missed. I don't need a detective. I need eyes I can trust." A beat. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. 1 hour of your time, and if you tell me to let it go, I'll let it go. I swear it. Ryan closed his eyes. He thought about the dead mercenary, the heart attack, the clean story, and he thought about the thing he'd known in his gut the second the lights went out, that somebody had opened that door on purpose. 1 hour, he said. He dropped Emily at school first, and he walked her all the way to the door, which he never did, and she noticed because Emily noticed everything. "You're being weird," she said. "I'm being a dad." "You're being a weird dad. You walked me to the door, and you keep looking around like a spy." "Maybe I'm a spy." "You're a sailor. Sailors aren't spies." How do you know? Maybe that's exactly what a spy sailor would want you to think. She rolled her eyes with the full theatrical weight of an 8-year-old. But when she hugged him goodbye, she held on a half-second longer than usual, and Ryan understood that his daughter, who missed nothing, had felt the change in him too. "Dad," she said into his jacket, "you've got your Navy face on." "My what?" "Your Navy face. The one where you're smiling but your eyes aren't." She pulled back and looked up at him dead serious. "You had it when Mom got sick." Ryan felt something twist in his chest. He knelt down to her level right there on the sidewalk and took her small face in his hands. "Listen to me. Everything is fine. You go learn your fractions and I'll pick you up at 3 OK. Nothing is wrong. Pinky promise you'll pick me up." He hooked her pinky with his. "Pinky promise." He watched her go all the way inside before he let the smile drop off his face. Lawson Dynamics took up the top 11 floors of a glass tower downtown, and Victoria's office was the kind of room that made the Ashford Hotel look modest. But Ryan barely saw it. He'd learned a long time ago not to be impressed by what men and women surrounded themselves with. He was more interested in the fact that Victoria had dismissed her assistant, closed the door herself, and drawn the blinds before she said a word. "You don't trust your own people," he observed. "After 3 days ago, I don't trust anyone in this building." She sat on the edge of her desk instead of behind it. "That's the whole problem, isn't it? Somebody had to know the layout of that gala. Somebody had to know which entrance my detail would use when the metal detectors would be down, how to get 4 armed men through a private event that took my team a month to plan. That's not an outsider, Ryan. That's someone with access. Somebody on your board, or my executive team, or my security, or my legal department, or—" She stopped and something crossed her face. "Or someone I trusted enough that I'm not even letting myself think their name." Ryan walked the perimeter of the office out of pure habit, checking the windows, the door, the vents. "Tell me what your company's finishing. You said at the hotel some people would prefer you didn't. What is it?" Victoria hesitated. "That's proprietary?" "Then I can't help you." "Ryan." "Victoria." He turned to face her. "You called me because you wanted eyes you could trust. Fine, but eyes need to see. If you want me to figure out who wanted you dead, I need to know why somebody wanted you dead. People don't hire 4 mercenaries over a personal grudge. They do it over money or power or a secret. So which is it?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then she went to her computer, typed something, and turned the screen toward him. "It's called Meridian," she said. "It's an encryption architecture. Without getting too technical, it's a way of securing data that can't be broken. Not by a government, not by a corporation, not by anyone. Right now, powerful people can see almost everything. Financial records, communications, the movement of money across borders. Meridian would make all of that go dark, completely private, untouchable." Ryan looked at the screen, then at her. "Who does that hurt? Everyone who makes a living off of being able to see what other people are hiding." She folded her arms. "There are men who have built empires on knowing where the money is. Corporate intelligence firms, data brokers, certain very quiet companies that sell information to the highest bidder. Meridian doesn't just compete with them, it ends them. My company finalizes it in 11 days, and the moment we do, an entire industry that trades in secrets becomes worthless." Ryan was quiet for a while. "So it's not a grudge, it's an execution. They didn't want to hurt you. They wanted to stop Meridian, and the fastest way to stop Meridian was to stop you." "Yes. And now that they've missed," Victoria said, and her voice didn't waver, but her hands did. "They'll try again." Ryan should have walked out. He knew he should have walked out. He had 3 days until he reported to active duty. He had a daughter who read his face like a book. He had every reason in the world to say, "This isn't my fight," and mean it. He'd done his part. He'd saved her life. He didn't owe her his own, but he thought about the dead mercenary with the convenient heart attack. He thought about the folded napkin with the heart on it tucked in his daughter's lunchbox. He thought about a world where people got murdered in ballrooms and the story got cleaned up by breakfast. "Show me the security footage from the gala," he said. The police took it. The police took the official footage. You're a technology CEO, Victoria. You're telling me there's not a single camera in that building that recorded to a server you own? Victoria blinked, and then for the first time since he'd met her, she almost smiled. You really do see everything, don't you? Show me. She had the footage. Of course, she had the footage. A backup feed that ran to Lawson Dynamics' own cloud, a precaution her paranoid younger self had insisted on years ago, and her confident older self had forgotten about. They watched it together on the big screen in her office, and Ryan narrated it like the debrief it was. There, stop it. Back up 10 seconds. He pointed. See the man at the service entrance, not the shooter, the one holding the door. He's checking his watch. He's not nervous, he's timing it. He knows exactly when the detectors go down. That's Devlin's man, Victoria whispered. That's his name is Cross. He's been on my detail for 2 years. He's the inside man. Ryan's jaw tightened. Or one of them. He held the door, and then he walked away clean. Where is he now? He was one of the survivors. He's on medical leave. He said he was injured in the crossfire. Victoria's face had gone pale. He came to my home, Ryan, last year. He drove me to my daughter's to my niece's christening because I didn't want to bring my full detail. I trusted him. People who betray you are always people you trusted. That's what makes it betrayal. Ryan kept his eyes on the screen. This Cross. He didn't plan this. Men like him take orders. Somebody paid him, and somebody higher up paid the person who paid him. I want to know who signs the checks. How do we possibly find that out? I can't exactly ask him. Ryan was quiet thinking, and then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it out of reflex. It was a text from the school. His stomach dropped before he even read it, because parents of only children learn to fear that particular buzz. Mr. Bennett, please call the front office regarding Emily. He was already dialing. This is Ryan Bennett. You called about my daughter. Mr. Bennett, hi, everything's fine. Please don't worry. The office administrator started, and Ryan's whole body unclenched by 1 degree. It's just, well, it's a little unusual. Emily got into the school's server. Ryan blinked. She got into the what? The administrative server. The one with the grade records and the network settings. She said she was, and I'm quoting her, seeing if it was secure. And it turns out it wasn't. And now she's fixed a vulnerability. Our IT contractor apparently missed for 2 years, and honestly, Mr. Bennett, we don't entirely know what to do, because on one hand, she broke about 4 rules, and on the other hand, she may have just saved the district from a data breach. Ryan pressed his hands to his forehead. She's 8. Yes. She's in the 3rd grade. Yes. Across the office, Victoria had gone very still, listening. I'll come get her, Ryan said. I'm sorry, I'll talk to her. This won't happen again. He hung up. Victoria was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Your daughter, she said slowly, just broke into a secured server. She's grounded for a month. Ryan. Victoria stepped toward him. How old is she? 8, and before you say anything, no, absolutely not. Whatever's happening in that head of yours, the answer is no. I didn't say. You didn't have to. Ryan's voice dropped hard and low, the voice he used exactly never with her, but had used plenty of times overseas. I let you pull me into a room to look at some footage. That's the line. My daughter does not go anywhere near this. She's a little girl. She's my little girl, and she is the one thing in this world I have left, and I will walk out of this building right now, and you will never hear from me again, before I let her within a mile of the people who murdered a man in a hospital bed. Are we clear? Victoria held up her hands. We're clear. I'm sorry. You're right. And she meant it. He could see she meant it. Go get your daughter. Ryan grabbed his jacket, but at the door he stopped because he was who he was, and he couldn't help it. That footage, he said. The backup feed. Is it on a server somebody could reach from outside? It's on our private cloud. It's... Victoria stopped. Her face changed. Why? Because if these people are as good as they seem, and if they know you kept a backup, then the footage that proves Cross held that door is sitting somewhere they'd very much like to erase. If I were them, I'd have already sent someone to delete it. He looked at her. You might want to get a copy of it somewhere they can't reach, right now, today, before it disappears the way that mercenary's heartbeat did. And he left her standing there, staring at her own computer, understanding for the first time exactly how deep the water was. Emily was sitting in the school office with her backpack in her lap and her chin up, radiating the particular defiance of a child who is entirely certain she did the right thing and is prepared to argue the point with anyone. When she saw Ryan, though, some of the defiance cracked. Am I in trouble? Ryan crouched down in front of her chair. Let's talk in the truck. They didn't talk in the truck. They sat in the school parking lot, and Ryan gripped the wheel and tried to figure out how to be angry at a child who was by every measure extraordinary. Emily, you can't just break into computers. It wasn't breaking in. Breaking in is when it's hard. This was easy. They had the default password still turned on. The default password. Dad, anybody could have walked in and taken every kid's home address. Anybody. She crossed her arms. So I turned it off, and I made them a new password, and I wrote it on a sticky note for the office lady. I helped. That's not the point. Then what's the point? Ryan opened his mouth and closed it again because the honest answer was, the point is, I need you to be a normal little girl right now because I'm about to walk into something dangerous and I cannot survive it if I have to worry about you too. And he couldn't say that to an 8-year-old. The point, he said finally, is that when you can do things other people can't do, other people notice. And sometimes the people who notice aren't nice people. And I need you to be smart about who notices you. He took her hands. Where'd you learn to do that anyway? The server thing. Emily looked down. The library, and YouTube. And this website that teaches you. She glanced up at him, suddenly small. I know I'm supposed to be doing fractions. I can do fractions. Fractions are just boring. Computers aren't boring. Computers are like... She searched for the word like locks. And I'm good at locks. Mom said I got it from her. Ryan went still. Your mom. She said her brain worked like a computer. She said mine did too. Emily's eyes were shiny now. She said one day I'd do something amazing with it. Was she wrong? And Ryan Bennett, who had run at 4 submachine guns without flinching, felt his own eyes sting. No, baby, he said. She wasn't wrong. She was never wrong about you. He pulled her into a hug across the center console, and she wrapped her arms around his neck the way she had the night he'd carried her to bed. But you gotta promise me something. From now on, the computer stuff, you do it at home with me knowing about it. No more surprises. No more servers that aren't yours. Deal. Deal. A pause. Am I still grounded? So grounded. Worth it, Emily muttered, and Ryan laughed despite everything, because how could he not? That night, after Emily was asleep, Ryan sat at the kitchen table and did the thing he'd been avoiding for 3 days. He pulled out an old battered notebook, the kind of thing a recon man keeps out of habit long after he's supposed to, and he started writing down everything he'd seen. The clustered guards, the propped door, the waved-through detector, cross-checking his watch, the dead mercenary, the clean story, Meridian, 11 days. His phone rang at 11:40. Victoria. Do you sleep? He asked. Not lately. Her voice was tight. You were right. About the footage. Ryan sat up. Talk to me. I copied it. The second you walked out, I copied the backup feed to a personal drive, and I took the drive home with me. Physical drive, not the cloud. And it's a good thing I did because 2 hours ago somebody wiped the entire backup server. Not just the gala footage. Everything. Months of feeds gone. Whoever did it had our internal credentials, Ryan. They logged in like they worked here. Ryan closed his eyes. So now they know you kept a copy. Because the only reason to wipe the whole server is to make sure they got the one file that mattered, and the fact that the file existed means somebody was watching what you accessed today. Silence on the line. Victoria, listen to me very carefully. Are you at home? Yes. Alone. My detail is... She stopped. My detail is the problem. My detail is how they got in. I sent them home. I'm here alone. Every hair on Ryan's arms stood up. That was a mistake. Lock your doors, every door. Are they locked? He heard her moving. Heard the click of a deadbolt. Heard her breathing pick up. Ryan, you're scaring me. Good. Scared keeps you alive. Now go to a room with one entrance, no windows if you've got one, and stay on the phone with me. I'm coming to you. What's your address? You can't leave your daughter. What's your address, Victoria? She gave it to him, and even as he wrote it down, even as he stood and grabbed his jacket, some cold and rational part of Ryan's mind was already screaming the truth at him. You have a daughter asleep down the hall. You cannot leave her, and you cannot bring her. And the only person who can watch her on no notice is Grace. And it's midnight, and you are about to become exactly what you swore to Victoria. You would never let yourself become a man with a family in the crosshairs. Stay on the phone, he told Victoria, and he padded down the hall to Emily's door and eased it open. His daughter was asleep, one arm flung over her stuffed rabbit, her chest rising and falling safe and warm, and entirely unaware that her father was standing in the doorway, making the kind of decision he'd hoped never to make again. Ryan, Victoria's voice small in his ear. Are you there? I'm here. I hear something. Downstairs. Ryan, I hear... Her voice cracked into a whisper. Somebody's in the house. Ryan's whole body went cold and clear, the way it had in the ballroom, the way it always had when everything narrowed down to the next 60 seconds. How many? He whispered back. Can you tell? I don't footsteps. More than one. Oh God, there. Victoria, look at me. Look at my voice. You're going to live through this, but you have to do exactly what I say. Is there a lock on the room you're in? Yes. Lock it. Quietly. Now. He was already moving, already grabbing his keys, already caught between two impossible poles. His daughter in one room, a woman about to die in another, and only one of him. I'm 40 minutes out. That's too long. You need to call 911 right now. Hang up on me and call 911, do you understand? They'll get here before the police. Then you need to not be where they think you are. Is there another way out of that room? A window, an attic, anything. He heard her crying now quietly, trying to be silent. He heard a floorboard creak somewhere in her house, somewhere close. He heard her whisper so soft he almost missed it. I don't want to die, Ryan. I have so much left to do. I don't want to die alone in my own house. And Ryan Bennett stood in his own hallway, his sleeping daughter behind one door, and a terrified woman in his ear, and he made a promise he had no earthly way to keep. You're not going to die tonight, he said. Not tonight, not on my watch. Now here's what we're going to do. And then through the phone, he heard the doorknob to Victoria's room begin very slowly to turn. The window, Ryan said fast and low, taking the stairs of his own house two at a time as he called Grace's number on his second phone. Victoria, the window, is it a drop, or is there a roof? There's the porch roof. It's below the guest room, but I'm not in the guest room. Then get to the guest room. When I say go, you open your door, you run for the guest room, you lock that one behind you, and you go out the window onto the porch roof. Do not stop. Do not look back. Do you have shoes? I'm barefoot. Doesn't matter. Feet heel. Grace picked up on the third ring, groggy. Grace, it's Ryan. I need you right now. I need you to come sit with Emily. It's an emergency. I'm so sorry. I wouldn't ask if thank you. Thank you. Use your key. She's asleep. I owe you everything. He hung up on Grace. Victoria, is the door still turning? It stopped. It stopped. Why did it stop? Because they knew the door was locked now, Ryan thought, and a locked door tells a professional exactly which room you're in. Go, he said. Guest room. Now. Move. He heard the scramble. Heard a door bang open. Heard her feet on hardwood. Heard a man's voice somewhere behind her shout. Something short and flat. Heard another door slam and a lock click. Heard Victoria's ragged breathing right up against the phone. I'm in the guest room. The window's stuck. Ryan, it won't. It's painted shut. It won't open. Break it. What? Find something heavy and break the window right now. They're coming through that door in about 15 seconds, and a locked door won't hold them. Break the glass. Get on the porch roof and get to the ground any way you can. A broken ankle beats a bullet every day of the week. Break the window, Victoria. He heard glass shatter, heard her cry out, heard the scrape of her body going over the frame, heard a thud and a gasp of pain, and then blessedly the sound of night air and her feet hitting grass. I'm out. I'm out. I'm outside. I'm running. Neighbors. Do you have neighbors? Lights on anywhere. There's a house, the Hendersons. They're always up late. Go there, bang on the door, get inside, get people around you, witnesses, lights. These men don't want to be seen. Go, go, keep going. And then he heard the most beautiful sound in the world. A door opening, an old man's startled voice, Victoria sobbing, "Please, please let me in, someone's trying to kill me, please." And the door closing again behind her. Safe, for now. Barely. Ryan stood in his own driveway, phone pressed to his ear chest, heaving as if he'd run the whole way himself. "Are you inside?" he asked. "I'm inside. I'm inside. They're calling the police. Ryan." She was crying openly now, the kind of crying that comes after when the body finally admits how close it came. "Ryan, they were in my house. They came to kill me in my own house. You were right. You were right about everything. The footage, the copy, all of it." Ryan sank down onto the tailgate of his truck. Down the street, he saw Grace's little car turning the corner, coming to sit with his sleeping daughter so he could save a stranger's life over the phone. And he understood with total and final clarity that the door he'd told himself he'd never walk through had already closed behind him. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "Stay at the neighbors. Wait for the police. Tell them everything, but do not under any circumstances tell them about the copy of the footage. That drive is the only card we've got, and if it goes into an evidence locker, it's as good as gone, same as everything else in this case. You keep that drive on your body. You don't put it down. Understand?" "I understand." A shaky breath. "You're not coming, are you? I can't leave my daughter. Not tonight. Not after this." He rubbed his face. "But I'm not walking away either. I want you to know that. 2 hours ago I was still telling myself I could report to duty and forget this whole thing happened. That's over. They came for you in your own house. That means the police can't protect you, and your own people can't protect you, and there's exactly one person left who saw this coming before it happened." He looked up at the porch light Emily always left on for him. "So I guess it's me." There was a long silence on the line. "What about your orders?" Victoria asked. "You report to active duty in 3 days. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Because that was the real question, wasn't it? 15 years of service, a career, an oath, and a daughter who needed her father alive more than the Navy needed one more lieutenant. "I've got some leave saved up," he said finally, "and some favors, and a friend named Marcus who's about to hate me." He went inside and traded a whispered word of thanks with Grace, who took one look at his face and asked no questions. He walked down the hall and eased open Emily's door one more time. She was still asleep, still safe, still holding her rabbit, still trusting completely that her father would keep every promise he ever made her. "Victoria," he said softly into the phone, watching his daughter breathe. "You asked me at the hotel why I ran at those men when I didn't even know you. You remember what I said? You said somebody had to." "Yeah." He pulled Emily's door shut gently and stood in the dark hallway of the only home that had ever mattered to him. "Well, somebody still does. And it turns out that somebody is me, whether I like it or not. So here's what happens next. Tomorrow morning, you and I sit down and you tell me everything. Every name, every board member, every executive, everyone who knew about Meridian, and everyone who knew about that gala. And we figure out who's behind this before they get a third try. Because there's always a third try. Men like this don't stop. They escalate. And if we can't find them in time..." Ryan looked at the closed door behind which his daughter slept, and he thought about the world he wanted to leave her, one where the men in the ballroom didn't win, where the clean stories didn't cover up the ugly truth, where a father could keep his little girl safe just by being brave enough to stand between her and the dark. "Then we make sure they never stop looking over their shoulder," he said, the same way they've made us look over ours. But we're going to find them. I've hunted worse men than these in worse places than this. The only difference now is what I'm fighting for." "What's that?" Ryan didn't answer right away. Down the hall, so quiet he almost missed it. Emily murmured something in her sleep, a word. Maybe his name, maybe nothing at all. And Ryan Bennett felt the whole shape of his life narrow down to the one thing it had narrowed down to every day since the morning he'd cut a sandwich into rectangles and made a promise wrapped in a pinky. "Everything," he said. "I'm fighting for everything." He hung up the phone. He thanked Grace and sent her home. And then he sat down at the kitchen table, opened his battered notebook, and under the list of everything he'd seen, he wrote 3 words and underlined them twice. And they were the same 3 words that had gotten him through every dark night of his life. The ones his wife had whispered to him before she died, and the ones he whispered to his daughter every single morning without her ever knowing he meant them for himself too. Never give up. Then he turned off the kitchen light, checked the locks on every door and window in his small house twice, sat down in the chair facing the front door with his notebook in his lap, and kept watch over his sleeping daughter until the sun came up. By morning, Ryan had a plan, and by noon, the plan had already started to fall apart, because that was how these things always went. You made a plan, and the enemy made a plan, and somewhere in the middle, the 2 plans collided, and only one of them survived. He'd brought Emily with him. He hadn't wanted to. He'd fought it in his own head all night. But the alternative was leaving her with Grace, an unarmed retired schoolteacher, in a house whose address these people could find as easily as they'd found Victoria's. And Ryan had decided that the only place his daughter was truly safe was within arm's reach of him. So he told her they were going on an adventure, and Emily, who saw through everything, had looked at his navy face and decided not to argue. "Is this about the shooting?" she'd asked in the truck. "Emily, because I'm not stupid, Dad. You saved that lady on the news. Now that lady keeps calling. And now we're driving to a hotel with the blinds closed, and you've got your navy face on all the way to 11. She looked at him. "I'm 8. I'm not 4. Ryan had gripped the wheel and made a decision he'd second guess for the rest of his life. "You're right," he said. "You're not 4, so I'm going to tell you the truth, and I need you to be brave, and I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Some bad people are trying to hurt the lady I saved. And now they might try to hurt us too, because I got in their way. So for the next few days, you stay where I can see you. You do what I say the second I say it, and you don't go anywhere alone. Not the bathroom, not the hallway, nowhere. Deal." Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded, slow and serious, and she didn't cry. And Ryan had never been more proud of anyone in his life. "Deal," she said. "Dad, can I help?" "No." "But you said I'm good at—" "No, Emily, absolutely not. You staying safe is how you help. That's the only way. Understand? Understand," she said. But Ryan had raised her, and Ryan knew the difference between understand and agree, and what his daughter had just given him was the first one, and definitely not the second. Victoria met them in a suite at a hotel across town, one Ryan had chosen himself for its sightlines, and its 2 exits, and its parking garage he could watch from the window. She looked 10 years older than she had at the gala. She hadn't slept, and when she saw Emily, her whole face changed. "You brought her," Victoria said. "I didn't have a choice." "I know. I understand." Victoria crouched down to Emily's level the way Ryan always did, and Ryan noticed she did it naturally, like a person who'd once had a child to crouch for. "Hi, you must be Emily. I'm Victoria. Your dad's the bravest man I've ever met." Emily studied her with the frank, unsettling directness of a child. "You're the lady from the ballroom." "I am." "My dad got shot saving you." Victoria's composure cracked just slightly. "Yes, he did. He said it was a graze. He always says that. He said that when he came back from Bahrain with the thing on his side." Emily's chin came up. "Are the bad people going to try to hurt him again?" The room went quiet. Victoria looked up at Ryan helpless, and Ryan crossed the room and put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Nobody's hurting anybody," he said. "That's my job. Now I brought your tablet and your headphones. You're going to sit right there where I can see you, and you're going to watch your shows, and Victoria and I are going to have a grown-up conversation. Okay. Okay. Emily took the tablet. But before she put her headphones on, she looked up at Victoria one more time. Don't let him do anything stupid. He does stupid things when he thinks nobody's watching. Victoria almost laughed and almost cried and managed neither. I'll watch him. I promise. They spread everything across the suite's dining table, the copied footage on Victoria's laptop, Ryan's battered notebook, a printout of Lawson Dynamics' board of directors, and a list Victoria had written out by hand of every single person who'd known the details of the gala's security arrangements. 14 names. 14, Ryan said. That's too many. We need to cut it down. How? We think like they think. Ryan tapped the list. Whoever did this needed 3 things. They needed to know about Meridian, so they'd understand why you had to die. They needed access to your security plans, so they could get 4 men into that room. And they needed money. Real money to hire professionals who'd murder a man in a hospital bed to keep him quiet. So which of these 14 people had all 3? Victoria stared at the list. Meridian was need to know. Only the board and my top 3 executives knew the timeline. She crossed off 6 names. That leaves 8. Of those 8 who had access to the gala security, the security plan went to me, my chief of staff Devlin, who's dead, and... She trailed off. Her pen hovered. And Harrison. Who's Harrison? Victoria set the pen down very carefully. Harrison Vale, my co-founder. He built this company with me from a garage. He's the vice chairman of the board. He's been my closest friend and business partner for 14 years. Her voice had gone strange and flat. He's Emily's age difference from me almost to the day. He was best man at my wedding. He gave the eulogy at my husband's funeral. Ryan watched her carefully. And 6 months ago, he voted against finishing Meridian. Victoria pressed her fingers to her mouth. He said it was too dangerous. He said it would make too many powerful enemies. He said it would get someone killed. A terrible laugh escaped her. He said it would get someone killed, Ryan, and I told him he was being paranoid, and I overrode him and I pushed Meridian to completion anyway. And 2 weeks later, 4 men walked into my gala with guns. Ryan let the silence sit. You don't want it to be him. He's the closest thing I have to family. Of course I don't want it to be him. That's exactly why you need to consider that it is. Ryan leaned forward. The people who betray you are always the people you trusted. I told you that yesterday. It's not the enemy you're watching for who gets you. It's the friend you'd never suspect. He tapped Harrison Vale's name. This man knew about Meridian. He had access to your security. He's got the money and the standing to hire professionals and clean up afterward. And he went on record predicting your death 2 weeks before somebody tried to make it happen. If this were a stranger, you'd already be sure. He's not a stranger. No, Ryan agreed. He's worse. He's someone who knows exactly how you think, exactly where you'll run, exactly who you'll trust. He looked at her. He knew you'd keep a backup of that footage, didn't he? That's how they knew to wipe your server. Victoria's face drained of all its color. Oh, God. Victoria, I need you to be honest with me. Is there any way Harrison could have known you'd send your detail home last night, that you'd be alone in your house? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Ryan saw it land on her like a physical blow. I texted him, she whispered. Last night, after you left. I was scared, and I didn't know who else I texted Harrison, and I told him I'd sent my detail home because I couldn't trust them, and I told him I had the footage, and I told him I was alone. Her hands were shaking. I told him where I'd be. I told the person trying to kill me exactly where to find me. It should have been enough. A name, a motive, a betrayal in a movie, that's where the heroes would have marched in and made the arrest. But Ryan had lived long enough to know that knowing and proving were 2 different countries with a hard border between them, and he said so. We can't touch him, he told her. Not yet. Right now, all we've got is a theory and a copied piece of footage that shows a dead man's subordinate holding a door. Harrison's name isn't on any of it. If we accuse the vice chairman of your own company of attempted murder, with what we've got, he buries us. He's got lawyers' money, and 14 years of being the good friend while you were the difficult genius. Who do you think a jury believes? Then what do? We get proof he can't wriggle out of. We connect him directly to the men who came for you. A payment, a communication, an order. Something with his fingerprints on it. Ryan rubbed his jaw. The man who held the door. Cross. He's the loose thread. He's alive. He's local. He's on medical leave. If we can get to Cross before Harrison cleans him up, the way he cleaned up that mercenary in the hospital, Cross can give us the whole chain. You want to find a trained mercenary, and ask him nicely. I want to find him before they kill him. Because right now Cross is the only man alive who can put Harrison in a courtroom, and Harrison knows it. Which means Cross is on borrowed time whether he realizes it or not. Ryan stood and walked to the window, checking the parking garage out of habit. A man on borrowed time is a man who might make a deal, especially if you get to him before his boss does, and you offer him the only thing that keeps him breathing. Which is us. Testimony. Protection. A reason to talk instead of run. Ryan turned back. Where does Cross live? Victoria was already pulling it up on her laptop. Her hands moving fast now, fear turning into something more useful. I have his employee file, home address, emergency contact, everything. He lives about 20 minutes from... She stopped. What? Ryan said. Victoria was staring at the screen. His file's been accessed. This morning, at 6:14 a.m. Someone pulled his home address out of our HR system 4 hours ago. She looked up, and the fear was back in full. It wasn't me. Ryan's blood went cold. Then Harrison's already moving on him. He's cleaning up the loose thread. He was already grabbing his jacket. How far is Cross's place? 20 minutes, but Ryan, you can't. Victoria's eyes went to Emily sitting on the couch with her headphones on, watching cartoons blissfully unaware. You can't take her to a mercenary's house, and you can't leave her here, and you can't... And that was the moment the whole impossible shape of it closed around Ryan Bennett like a trap. He could not bring his daughter into danger. He could not leave his daughter unguarded. He could not be in two places at once. And a man's life, the one man who could end this, was running out somewhere 20 minutes away. He looked at Victoria. He looked at Emily. And he made the only choice a father could make. You stay here with her, he told Victoria. Both of you. You don't open that door for anyone but me. Not room service, not housekeeping, not the police. Nobody. You keep that drive on you, and you keep my daughter in your sight. And if anything feels wrong, you call me and you get out through the stairwell to the parking garage. Level 2. The blue truck keys are under the driver's mat. You drive. You don't stop. Understand? Ryan. Understand. I understand. Victoria grabbed his arm. But you're walking into a mercenary's house with no weapon and no backup, and if Harrison's men are already there, then I'll deal with it. It's what I do. He knelt in front of the couch and gently lifted one of Emily's headphones. Hey, kiddo. Emily pulled them off. Are you doing something stupid? I'm doing something important. I have to go out for a little while. Victoria's going to stay with you, and you're going to listen to her exactly like you listen to me. And I'll be back before you finish your show. Okay. Emily's eyes searched his face, that face-reading gift of hers that he'd cursed and blessed 1,000 times. And whatever she saw there frightened her, because she reached out and grabbed his sleeve with both hands. Don't go, she said. Dad, please, I have a bad feeling. I have a really, really bad feeling. Ryan's heart broke clean down the middle. He pulled her into a hug, pressed his lips to the top of her head, and breathed her in like he was memorizing her. I'll be back, he whispered. I promise, Pinky. She hooked his pinky with hers, but she didn't let go of his sleeve, and when he finally pulled away, her fingers left creases in the fabric. Pinky, she said in the smallest voice he'd ever heard from her. You never break a pinky promise. I never have, Ryan said, and I'm not starting today. He didn't know yet that it was the first promise to her he wouldn't be able to keep on his own terms. Cross lived in a rented house at the end of a quiet street, and Ryan knew he was too late before he even reached the door because the front door was already open 3 inches and the house was already too still. He went in low and fast and empty-handed the way he'd cleared 100 rooms, and he found Cross in the kitchen, and Cross was still alive, but not for long. 2 rounds close range professional. Whoever had done it had left less than an hour ago. Ryan crouched beside the dying man and did the only thing he could. Cross. Cross, look at me. Who did this? Cross's eyes rolled toward him unfocused, drowning. You, ballroom guy? That's right. It's me, the man who wrecked your job. Ryan pressed his hands to the wound uselessly. Who hired you, Cross? Give me a name. You're dying, and the man who did this is the same man who ordered it, you know that. Don't let him win. Give me his name. Cross coughed red. Vale, he whispered. It was always Vale. He paid. Cash and crypto. There's a phone. What phone where? Burner, taped, under the sink. Everything's on it. He doesn't know I kept insurance. Cross's hand fumbled, grabbed Ryan's collar with the last of his strength. The girl. He knows about the girl. Your girl. The computer girl. He knows she can open Meridian. He's not going to kill her. He's going to take her. Ryan went absolutely perfectly still. What did you just say? He needs someone who can crack it. The CEO won't. But a scared kid, he can make her. He knows where. Cross's eyes were fixed now, the light going out of them. He knows where you're keeping them, ballroom guy. He's known since this morning. He's already going. And Cross died with his hand still gripping Ryan's collar. Ryan didn't waste 1 second on grief. He ripped the burner phone from under the sink, shoved it in his pocket, and he was already running for the truck, already dialing Victoria, already understanding with a father's total animal terror that he had made a catastrophic mistake. He had left his daughter. He had left his daughter with a woman and a locked door, and the man hunting them had known where to find them since 6 o'clock that morning, and Ryan was 20 minutes away. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Pick up! Ryan snarled, flooring the truck, running lights weaving through traffic. Pick up, Victoria. Pick up the phone. Pick up. It went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He called a third time, and this time it connected, and the voice that answered was not Victoria's. It was a man's voice. Calm. Cultured. Almost gentle. The voice of someone who had never once in his life had to raise it to get what he wanted. Lieutenant Bennett, the voice said. I've heard so much about you. Ryan's hands locked white on the wheel. Harrison Vale. Ah, so you found Cross. I'd hoped to reach him a little sooner, but no matter. He didn't have anything to say that changes where we are. Where's my daughter? Ryan's voice was not a question, and it was not human. It was something older than either. Where is my daughter Vale? She's right here. She's perfectly fine. She's really quite remarkable. You're Emily. Do you know? She tried to reprogram the door lock on the suite before my men even got it open. 8 years old. Extraordinary. A soft, admiring sound. Victoria's fine too for now. Bruised. She fought harder than I expected. But everyone's alive, Lieutenant, and everyone can stay alive, and that's entirely up to you. Ryan forced the animal down, forced himself to think. A man who wanted to negotiate was a man who hadn't won yet. What do you want? Meridian. Vale's voice never changed. Victoria won't finish it. She'd rather die than hand it over, which admirable but inconvenient. Your daughter, however, is one of maybe a dozen minds on this planet who could crack the architecture and open the back door I need. And unlike Victoria, your daughter has a pressure point. A pause. She has you. You touch her. I don't want to touch her, Lieutenant. God, no. I want you to understand something. And here, for the first time, the gentle voice hardened into something Ryan recognized, the cold, rationalized certainty of a man who'd convinced himself his crimes were logic. I built that company. I bled for it. And Victoria was going to burn a $14 billion industry to the ground to prove a point about privacy. Do you understand how many people I answer to? How many powerful, patient, unforgiving people who invested in a future where Meridian does not exist? I'm not the villain here, Lieutenant. I'm the only thing standing between all of us, and a very ugly ending. I gave Victoria every chance. She wouldn't listen. Now I need the child to open a door, and I need you to convince the child to cooperate. And if I don't, then I lose a business advantage and you lose a daughter, and neither of us wants that. But only one of us is holding her." The gentleness came back, and it was worse than the hardness. "Come to the address my associate is about to text you. Come alone. Come unarmed. Bring me the phone you just took from Cross's kitchen, because I know you took it and I want it back. And I give you my word that when Meridian is open, your daughter and Victoria walk out of that building alive, and this ends. That's the deal, Lieutenant. That's the only deal. You have 40 minutes. Ryan heard in the background, small and terrified, and unmistakably his, "Dad. Dad, is that you? Don't come. Dad, it's a trap, don't." And then the sound of a hand covering a mouth, and the muffled struggle of an 8-year-old, and Harrison Vale's gentle voice saying away from the phone, "Shh, sweetheart, your father's coming. Everything's going to be fine." "Emily?" Ryan roared. "Emily, I'm coming, baby. I'm coming. You hold on. Daddy's coming." The line went dead. Ryan pulled the trucks over because his hands were shaking too hard to drive, and for exactly 10 seconds, Ryan Bennett fell apart. He gripped the wheel and he shook, and a sound came out of him that he'd never made before, not when Sarah died, not in any war, a raw, broken thing torn up from somewhere below his ribs. His daughter. His little girl. His one thing. In the hands of the man who'd murdered his way through this entire nightmare because Ryan had left her, because Ryan had chosen a dying mercenary over his own child, because Ryan had told himself she'd be safe, and she had not been safe, and every single alarm bell his instincts had rung, every bad feeling Emily herself had begged him to listen to had been right. "Don't go, Dad. I have a really, really bad feeling." She'd known. His 8-year-old had known, and he hadn't listened, and now. And then, as fast as it came, Ryan shut it down. Because falling apart was a luxury for men whose children weren't in danger, and grief could wait, and there would be time to hate himself for the rest of his life, but there was not time for it now. Now there was only the mission. Now there was only the one thing left in the entire world that mattered. He wiped his face. He picked up the burner phone he'd taken from Cross's insurance. Cross had said everything on it, everything Vale didn't know he'd kept. And he called the one person left he could trust. "Marcus," he said when his old friend picked up. "I need you, right now. No questions until it's over. I need everything you've got, and I need it in 20 minutes, and I need you to trust me with your life, the way I trusted you with mine in Aiden." "Ryan?" Marcus's voice sharpened instantly, the old wartime alertness snapping into place. "What's happening? You sound like they took Emily." Ryan's voice cracked on his daughter's name and then went flat and lethal. "A man named Harrison Vale took my daughter and Victoria Lawson, and he wants me to walk into a building alone and unarmed, and he thinks I'm going to do it because he thinks I'm just a scared father." Ryan started the truck. "He's half right. I'm a father, but I'm not just a scared one. And this man made the last mistake of his life the second he put his hands on my little girl." "Tell me where." "He's about to text me an address. I'm going to send it to you the second he does." Ryan pulled back onto the road, and now his hands were steady, as they'd been in the ballroom, steady, as they'd been on every worst night of his life. "He told me to come alone and unarmed, so that's exactly what he's going to see. A father alone with empty hands walking in to save his little girl." His jaw set like iron. "And while he's watching the father come through the front door, I need you and your best men coming through everything else. Can you do that? Can you get me 4 good men in 20 minutes? I can get you 6. Ryan?" Marcus paused. "This man, you said he's already killed people. Devlin, a mercenary in a hospital. Cross an hour ago, 2 rounds close range. Yeah, he kills people. He kills them and he cleans it up, and he does it in a gentle voice, and he sleeps just fine." The address came through on Ryan's phone. He read it, memorized it, and forwarded it to Marcus without slowing down. "That's it. That's where he's got them. There's my daughter, and there's the woman I promised I'd protect, and there's the man who thinks he's already won. Ryan." Marcus's voice was quiet now. "What's the plan when you get inside? Walk me through it. Because if you go in there hot with your kid in the room, this goes bad fast." And Ryan Bennett, driving toward the hardest hour of his life, laid it out in the flat, clear voice of a man who had made peace with exactly what he was about to do. "The plan is that Harrison Vale is a man who's never once in his life had to raise his voice," Ryan said. "He's a man who does everything with money in other people's hands. He's never been in a room where the violence is real and it's coming for him personally. He thinks he understands what I am because he read a news story about a hero dad." Ryan's eyes fixed on the road ahead. "He has no idea what I am. He's about to find out. And the last thing he's going to understand right at the very end is that there is no security system on Earth, no guards, no money, no gentle voice, no clever plan that can stop a father from getting to his daughter. He built his whole life on being untouchable. He's about to learn what that word means to a man like me. And Emily Victoria." Ryan thought of his daughter's voice, small and brave, and cut off mid-word. "Don't come, Dad. It's a trap." He thought of the pinky promise. He thought of the porch light she always left on for him. "I'm going to get them out," he said. "Both of them. Every one of them walks out of that building alive, except the men who don't deserve to. That's the mission. That's the only mission. And I have never once failed a mission when it mattered this much." He pressed the accelerator down. 20 minutes, Marcus. Bring everything. And Marcus, when this is over, I'm going to owe you for the rest of my life." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said. "Go get your daughter, brother. We're right behind you." Ryan hung up, and he drove into the last light of the afternoon toward the building where the man in the gentle voice was waiting, and somewhere in that building, his daughter was afraid. And every mile that closed between them, Ryan Bennett stopped being the hero dad from the news and became the thing he'd spent 15 years and 2 wars learning how to be, the thing Harrison Vale, in all his money and all his cleverness, had never once had to face, the thing that was about to walk through his front door with empty hands and absolutely nothing left to lose. A father, coming for his child, and nothing on this earth was going to stop him. The building was an old Lawson Dynamics data center on the industrial edge of the city. Decommissioned 2 years back, the kind of place Harrison Vale would know was empty and off the books because he'd signed the paperwork that emptied it. Ryan parked the truck where they told him to, in plain sight in the middle of a cracked lot, and he sat for a moment with the engine ticking and Cross's burner phone in his pocket and his empty hands resting on the wheel. Then he called Marcus one last time, quiet and fast. "I'm here. Are you in position?" "Getting there. Loading dock on the north side's open. We're coming in slow and quiet. 6 of us. Give me 8 minutes, Ryan. Do not go in for 8 minutes." "I don't have 8 minutes. He's watching the lot. If I sit here, he gets suspicious, and suspicious is bad for Emily." Ryan's eyes swept the building's dark windows. "I'm going in now. I'll buy you the time from the inside. Whatever you hear, whatever it sounds like, you do not move until you're set. You move early, you get my daughter killed. You wait until you're sure. Promise me." "Ryan?" "Promise me, Marcus." A pause. "I promise. 8 minutes. Keep him talking." Ryan hung up, got out of the truck, and raised his hands over his head, where the watchers could see them. He walked across that lot alone, and unarmed, a father in a jacket with empty hands, exactly the man Harrison Vale expected to see. And every step of the way, he was counting. Counting windows, counting the seconds, counting the men he could see, and estimating the men he couldn't. Building the room in his head before he ever entered it, because that was what 15 years had taught him to do, and it was the only weapon they'd let him bring. 2 men met him at the door. Professionals, both of them, and they patted him down with the bored competence of men who'd done it 1,000 times. They took Cross's burner phone from his pocket. They found nothing else because there was nothing else. One of them spoke into a radio. "He's clean. He came alone." "Of course I came alone," Ryan said evenly. "He's got my daughter. What else was I going to do?" They walked him inside through cold, gutted corridors, where the servers had been ripped out, and only the empty racks remained, and Ryan cataloged every door and every turn, and finally they brought him into a wide-open space that had once held the heart of the data center, and now held the only 3 things in the world Ryan cared about seeing: Emily. Sitting in a rolling office chair, a laptop open in front of her, her feet not touching the floor, her face streaked with dried tears and set in a fury that made Ryan's heart break and swell at the same time. Victoria. In a chair beside her, hands zip-tied a bruise darkening her cheekbone, but alive, upright, defiant. And Harrison Vale, standing behind them both with the mild, pleasant expression of a man hosting a dinner party, one hand resting on the back of Emily's chair. "Dad?" Emily started up out of the chair, and a man's hand pushed her back down, and Ryan took one step, and 4 guns came up at once, and he stopped because he had to stop, because there were too many, and his daughter was in the middle of them. "It's okay, baby," Ryan said, and his voice did not shake, because he would not let it shake in front of her. "I'm here. I told you I'd come. Are you hurt?" "No." Emily's chin trembled, but her voice held. "But I didn't do it, Dad. He wanted me to open the thing and I said no. I said no like 100 times. That's my girl. Lieutenant Bennett." Harrison Vale smiled warm and easy. "Right on time. And you brought the phone. Thank you. My associate tells me you came alone exactly as we discussed. I have to say I'm impressed. A lot of men in your position would have done something rash. You have my daughter," Ryan said. "There's nothing rash left for me to do. There's just the deal." "There's just the deal," Vale agreed. He gestured at the laptop in front of Emily. "And the deal is very simple. Meridian's architecture is loaded on that machine. Your remarkable daughter opens the back door. I need a trivial task for a mind like hers. I'm told a few hours of work at most, and the moment it's done, all 3 of you walk out of here, and I never trouble your family again. You go back to your ship. Emily goes back to school. Victoria goes back to being a very rich woman who's learned an important lesson about which industries one does not destroy. Everybody lives. Isn't that better than the alternative?" "Don't do it, Ryan," Victoria said sharply. "Whatever he's promising, he's lying. The second Meridian's open, he doesn't need any of us. He can't let us live. We're the only witnesses to everything. He'll—" "Victoria." Vale's voice stayed gentle, but something cold moved under it. "You're frightening the child. He'll kill us the second he gets what he wants." Victoria pressed on. "That's what he does. That's what he did to Devlin, to Cross, to that man in the hospital. He cleans up. We're just more mess to clean." One of Vale's men stepped forward and backhanded Victoria across the bruised side of her face, hard, and she cried out, and Emily screamed, and Ryan moved. He got 2 steps before the guns stopped him again. But those 2 steps had told him something. Told him where every man's attention snapped. Told him how fast they were, told him which of them flinched and which of them didn't. He filed it away. He raised his hands again slowly. "Don't touch her," Ryan said, and his voice had dropped into a register that made even Vale's smile flicker. "Anybody in this room touches either of them again, and I promise you, on my life, on everything I have ever believed in, you will not survive the next 10 minutes. I don't care how many guns you've got. You hurt my daughter or that woman, and I will find a way. You understand me, I will find a way." For a long moment, nobody moved. And Harrison Vale looked at Ryan Bennett. Really looked at him the way Victoria had looked at him in the ballroom, the way Emily read his face every morning, and for the first time, something uncertain crossed his mild features. Because Vale was a man who understood money and leverage and pressure points, and he had built his entire plan on the certainty that a father with a gun to his child would do anything, would be anything, would break. And what he was looking at was not a man who was breaking. "You're very confident," Vale said slowly, "for a man with no cards." "I've got one card," Ryan said. "You just haven't figured out what it is yet." He needed to buy time. Marcus needed minutes, and every minute cost blood, so Ryan did the only thing he could do. The thing he was strangely good at. The thing that had gotten information out of hard men in worse rooms than this. He kept Harrison Vale talking. Because men like Vale, men who did everything at a distance through other people's hands, men who'd convinced themselves they were the reasonable ones, they always wanted to be understood. "You said you're not the villain," Ryan said. "Back on the phone. You said you're the only thing standing between everybody and an ugly ending. Explain that to me. Because from where I'm standing, you murdered your own head of security, and you're holding a gun on an 8-year-old, and that looks pretty villainous. Because you don't see the whole board." Vale took the bait exactly as Ryan had known he would. He stepped out from behind Emily's chair, warming to it a man who'd waited a long time for someone to explain himself to. Victoria sees a principle: privacy, freedom, beautiful words. She never once did the math on what those words cost. Meridian doesn't just protect the innocent lieutenant. It protects everyone. The traffickers, the launderers, the men who move weapons and worse across borders that only stay visible because people like me can see the money move. Take away the light and you don't get freedom. You get a world where the worst people on Earth operate in total darkness. So you're a patriot. I'm a realist. There's a difference, and the difference is that realists get their hands dirty. Vale spread those hands uncalloused, manicured. Do you think the people I answer to are cartoon criminals? Some of them are governments, Lieutenant. Some of them are agencies whose names you'd recognize. Meridian threatened interests far larger than one company, and when Victoria wouldn't listen to reason, I did the only thing left. I contained the threat. I'm sorry people died. I take no joy in it. But I sleep at night because I know that every one of those deaths bought a safer world than the one Victoria wanted to build. That's a real pretty speech, Ryan said. You practice it in the mirror. Vale's smile thinned. Here's what I hear when you talk. Ryan went on, and his voice was quiet and steady, and it filled the whole cold room. I hear a man who was second, 14 years co-founder, built it from a garage, and it's her name on the building, her face on the magazines, her genius they talk about. And one day she's about to do the biggest thing either of you will ever do, and she doesn't need your permission, and she overrides your vote, and you realize you were never her partner. You were her employee with a fancy title. Ryan watched the words land. This was never about traffickers, Vale. This was about a man who couldn't stand that the world was going to remember her and forget him. So you dressed it up in a speech about a safer world, and you told yourself you were the hero, because the alternative was admitting you're just a jealous man who had his friend's guests shot to feel important. Enough. And there it was, the crack. Vale's gentle voice rose just slightly, just once, and Ryan saw every one of his men register. It saw the surprise on their faces, because they'd never heard it either. You know nothing about it. Nothing. I gave that company everything. Everything. And she was going to throw it all away, and me with it for a principal. There he is, Ryan said softly. There's the real one. Not the realist. The jealous one. The one who's been standing in her shadow for 14 years, telling himself he didn't mind. Dad? Emily's voice small from the chair. She was staring at her father with wide eyes, and Ryan understood she was doing what she always did. Reading his face, and he made himself send her a message with his eyes alone. Steady. Baby. Steady. Trust me. Wait. And his daughter, who missed nothing, gave him the smallest nod, and Ryan's heart nearly came apart with love for her. Vale caught the exchange and misread it entirely. How touching, he said, gathering his composure back around himself like a coat. But we're finished with the philosophy portion of the evening. Emily. He turned to the little girl. You're going to open Meridian now. Your father's here, you can see he's fine, and the sooner you finish, the sooner you all go home. That's what you want, isn't it? To go home. Emily looked at the laptop. She looked at her father. And Ryan saw the calculation running behind her eyes, that brilliant, terrible mind of hers turning something over, and cold fear gripped him because he knew that look. It was the look she got right before she did something clever that she'd been specifically told not to do. Emily, Ryan said carefully. Whatever you're thinking. Look at me. I can open it, Emily said. But she wasn't talking to Vale. She was talking to her father, and there was something in her voice, some private message meant only for him. I can open it, Dad. It's not even that hard. He's right, I could do it in a couple hours. She paused. Or I could do it a different way. A way where it looks like I'm opening it, but I'm really doing something else. Something that would be really, really bad for the person watching. Her eyes locked on his. You taught me to be smart about who notices me. Remember, Ryan's blood went cold and hot at once. His 8-year-old had just told him in a code only a father could read that she could turn the laptop into a weapon. That she could reach out through Vale's own systems and do God only knew what. And every instinct screamed at him to shut it down, to keep her small and safe and out of it, and warring against that instinct was the desperate arithmetic of a man buying minutes for the cavalry. "No," Ryan said. "Emily, no. You don't do anything but sit there. Do you hear me? This is not your fight. This is mine." "But Dad, I mean it." He put every ounce of command he had into it, the voice that had moved men under fire. "You are 8 years old, and you are the bravest person I have ever known, and you are going to sit in that chair, and you are going to let your father handle this. That's an order, sailor. You hear me?" And Emily, with tears standing in her eyes, gave him a tiny trembling smile, because he'd called her sailor, and she said, "Aye, aye," in the smallest voice, and Ryan turned back to Vale before the man could parse any of it. "She'll open it," Ryan said. "But not with a gun on her. Get your men back. Give her room. She's a child and she's terrified, and she can't concentrate with 4 rifles pointed at her head. You want Meridian? Then you let me stand next to my daughter while she works, and you pull your men back to the walls. That's my counteroffer. Otherwise, we stand here all night, and you don't have all night, do you, Vale? Because those governments and agencies you answer to, they're not patient people. They want this done." It was a gamble, and it worked because it was true, and because Vale wanted it done, and because getting Ryan to stand beside the child instead of across from his men felt to Vale like Ryan surrendering. "Pull back to the walls," Vale ordered. "Let the man stand with his daughter, but watch him. If he so much as—" "I'm not going to do anything," Ryan said, walking slowly to Emily's side, hands visible the whole way. "I'm going to stand here and watch my little girl work. That's all." He reached her chair. He put one hand on her small shoulder, and under his breath so quiet it was barely a breath at all. He said the only thing that mattered. "When it goes loud, you go down. Floor. Under the desk. Don't come out till I come get you. Nod if you understand." Emily's shoulder moved under his hand. The smallest nod. "Okay," Ryan said aloud, squeezing her shoulder. "Go ahead, baby. Show them what you can do." Emily's hands moved over the keys, and to Vale and his men. It looked like a frightened child complying lines of code scrolling past, and only Ryan knew that his daughter's face had gone into a very particular kind of focus, the focus of a mind that had found a lock and meant to pick it. He didn't know what she was doing. He'd told her not to. But he knew his daughter, and he knew that whatever it was not what Harrison Vale thought it was. And he knew his 8 minutes were almost up. "You know what I keep thinking about," Ryan said conversationally, his hand still on Emily's shoulder, his eyes tracking every man in the room without ever seeming to. That night at the gala, 4 men came through a locked-down room, and everybody froze. 300 people, professional security, and everybody froze except me. "You know why I didn't freeze, Vale?" "Enlighten me," Vale said, watching Emily's screen with hungry eyes. "Because freezing is what happens when your brain can't accept what it's seeing. When the thing in front of you is so far outside your world that you just lock up." Ryan's voice stayed easy casual, a man passing time. "You've never seen real violence up close, have you? Not once. You've ordered plenty. Devlin, that mercenary cross an hour ago, but you've always been in another room when it happened. You've never had it come for you. Is there a point to this?" "The point," Ryan said, "is that in about 10 seconds it's going to come for you, and you're going to freeze, because your brain won't be able to accept it. And that half second where you freeze—" Ryan's hand tightened on Emily's shoulder. "The signal is going to be the last thing that ever happens to you." And the north wall of the room blew inward. Marcus and his 6 men came through the loading dock and the service door at the same instant, flashbangs first, and the room went white and deafening. And in the half-second of chaos where every one of Vale's men flinched toward the breach, Ryan Bennett moved. "Down!" he roared, and Emily dropped out of the chair and under the desk exactly as she'd been told. And Ryan was already inside the reach of the nearest gunman. He'd spent the whole conversation marking them, and he took the closest one first. A strike to the throat, a twist the man's rifle in Ryan's hands before the body hit the floor. He put 2 rounds into the second man's leg, and 1 into the third's shoulder, dropping them without killing, because even here, even now, some core of him held. Marcus's men were pouring fire into the room, and Vale's mercenaries were caught in a crossfire they'd never seen coming, professionals undone by the one thing they hadn't planned for a father who'd brought an army through the back door, while he walked through the front with empty hands. "Emily, stay down!" Ryan shouted, moving, always moving, putting himself between every gun and the desk his daughter was hiding under. He reached Victoria, still zip-tied in her chair in the middle of the firefight, and he threw his body over her and dragged her chair and all to the floor behind an empty server rack. "Stay low. I've got you. Stay down." "Emily." Victoria gasped. "She's under the desk. She's safe. Stay down." It was over in 90 seconds. Marcus's men were better, and they'd had surprise, and Vale's mercenaries were paid professionals who had suddenly discovered that no fee was worth this. 2 surrendered. The rest were down. The gunfire stopped, and the terrible ringing silence rushed back in, and Ryan came up off of Victoria with a borrowed rifle already sweeping the room, counting, clearing the way he always did, because the last man down is never the last man. And he found Harrison Vale exactly where Ryan had known he'd be. Frozen. Standing in the middle of the chaos, untouched, a small pistol in his manicured hand, that he had somehow never managed to fire, staring at the wreckage of his plan, with the blank, uncomprehending face of a man whose entire understanding of the world had just been proven wrong. He'd never been in a room where the violence was real. He'd frozen, exactly as Ryan had promised him he would. "Drop it," Ryan said. Vale's eyes found him. The pistol trembled in his hand. You brought men. You came alone. You gave your word." "I gave you my word. I'd walk in the front door, alone and unarmed," Ryan said, advancing on him, slow and steady, rifle level. "And I did. Every word of it was true. You just heard what you wanted to hear. The way you've heard what you wanted to hear this whole time." He kept coming. "Drop the gun, Vale. It's over." "It's not. I have people I have. You don't understand who I understand exactly who you are." Ryan was close now, close enough to see the man shaking. "You're a jealous man who murdered his way through a nightmare because he couldn't stand being second. And now you're standing in a room full of the mess you made, holding a gun. You can't even make yourself fire because for the first time in your whole life, the violence is real, and it's right in front of you, and you've finally figured out you were never the reasonable one. You were just the coward who paid other men to do it." Ryan's voice never rose. "Drop the gun. I'm not going to ask again." For one terrible heartbeat, Ryan thought Vale would raise it. He saw the man's finger tighten. He saw the desperate math running behind those eyes. And then from under the desk, a small, clear voice said, "It won't fire." Everyone turned. Emily's face was just visible in the gap beneath the desk, pale and furious and triumphant. "I locked it out," Emily said. "While you thought I was opening your thing, every phone and every device on your network, I pushed something to all of them. His gun's got a smart lock. I saw it in the inventory file. It's the same system, it talks to the network, so I locked it. It won't fire for anybody but the owner, and I changed who the owner is." Her chin came up. "I told you I could do it a different way, Dad. I did the different way." Ryan looked at Harrison Vale and at the useless gun in his hand, and at his 8-year-old daughter who had reached out through the enemy's own network and disarmed the man holding them hostage. And Ryan Bennett started to laugh, a broken, disbelieving, overwhelmed laugh. The laugh of a father who has just watched his child save all their lives. "That's my girl," he said. "That's my girl." Vale dropped the gun. It clattered on the concrete, and he sank down after it, and the fight went out of him all at once, and he became what he'd always been, under the gentle voice and the speeches, a small man who'd run out of other people's hands to hide behind. Marcus appeared at Ryan's side, breathing hard, rifle slung a fresh cut over his eye. "Clear. Both exits, whole floor. 2 of theirs surrendered, the rest are down, none of ours worse than scratches." He looked at Vale on the floor, then at Ryan. "The police are 8 minutes out. I called them the second we breached. Figured you'd want them coming to a scene that's already won instead of a hostage situation." "You figured right." Ryan was already moving, already dropping the rifle, already going to his knees beside the desk. "Emily. Emily, come here, baby. It's safe now. Come here." And Emily came out from under the desk and threw herself into her father's arms so hard it knocked him back on his heels, and she was crying now, finally, all the terror of the last hours pouring out of her at once, and Ryan wrapped her up and held her against his chest and pressed his face into her hair and let his own tears come silent and unashamed. "I've got you," he said over and over, rocking her. "I've got you. You're safe. You're safe. I've got you, and I'm never letting go, and I am so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I left you. I will never leave you again. Never, never. You came. Emily sobbed into his neck. I told them you'd come. I told them and told them. You always keep your pinky promise. Always. Ryan whispered, holding his daughter in the wreckage of everything Harrison Vale had built. Always, baby. Always. Across the room, Marcus cut Victoria's zip ties, and she came unsteadily to her feet, rubbing her wrists, her bruised face streaked with tears of her own. She looked at Ryan and Emily wrapped together on the floor, at the man who'd walked through the front door, with empty hands to save a stranger, and her whole world. And she pressed a hand to her mouth and simply wept because there are some debts too large to ever say out loud. And Harrison Vale sat on the cold concrete floor of the data center he'd chosen because he thought it was empty and off the books. And he watched the father hold his daughter, and he understood at last the thing Ryan had told him at the very beginning, that there is no security system on Earth, no money, no guards, no gentle voice, no clever plan that can stop a father from getting to his child. He'd built his whole life on being untouchable, and a Navy single dad with empty hands had reached right through all of it and touched him anyway. The police came through the doors 8 minutes later, exactly as Marcus had promised, and they found what Ryan had built for them on purpose. Not a hostage crisis, but an aftermath. Harrison Vale sitting handcuffed on the floor. 2 mercenaries face down and zip-tied. A CEO alive and free. And a father sitting against an empty server rack with his daughter asleep against his chest, because Emily had cried herself out and then simply finally let go, trusting completely that the arms around her would hold. The detective who'd interviewed Ryan at the gala was among them. He walked in, took one long look at the scene, took in Harrison Vale, took in Ryan and the sleeping child. And he stopped in the middle of the ruined room and shook his head slowly. You, he said. Me. Ryan agreed quietly, so as not to wake Emily. When they told me the Lawson vice chairman was behind the gala, I didn't believe it. And when they told me some off-the-books security guy cracked the whole thing open... He looked at Ryan. That's you too, isn't it? Same guy from the ballroom. Same guy. The detective crouched down to Ryan's level. Son, I told you 3 weeks ago I'd never seen anything like what happened in that ballroom. He glanced at the handcuffed man, at the surrendered mercenaries, at the whole impossible thing Ryan had done. I'm going to have to come up with something new to say now. Just say it's over, Ryan said, looking down at his daughter's face. That's all I want to hear. That it's over and she's safe. The detective's expression softened in a way Ryan wouldn't have expected from a man 22 years on the job. It's over, he said. She's safe. You did that. You keep her, and you go home. But it wasn't quite over, not that night, because things like this never end clean the way they do in movies. There were statements to give, and a burner phone to hand over Cross's insurance, the one Ryan had carried in, and Vale's men had taken, and Marcus had recovered off the floor in the chaos, the one that turned out to hold exactly what Cross had promised: payment records, encrypted messages. Vale's voice on a dozen calls, arranging a dozen crimes. Everything. The whole chain from the gala to the hospital to Cross's own kitchen, laid out in a dead man's careful hoard of blackmail material. Ryan handed it to the detective personally. Everything he did is on there, he said. Don't let it disappear the way the rest of this case almost did. This one you protect. This one we protect, the detective agreed. You have my word. And this time the word held because the evidence was too complete, and the witnesses too many, and the man at the center of it, too, thoroughly caught. Harrison Vale, who had built his whole life on operating through other people's hands, discovered that other people's hands make an awful lot of records, and every one of them pointed back at him. It was nearly 3 a.m. when they finally let Ryan go. He carried Emily to the truck she'd woken only long enough to wrap her arms around his neck and murmur rectangles before sliding back under, and Victoria walked out with them into the cold parking lot where this had all nearly ended. Ryan! She stopped him by the truck. Her face was still bruised, but there was something steadier in it now. Something that had been broken open and was starting already to rebuild itself into something stronger. I don't have the words. I've been trying to find them all night, and I don't have them. You saved my life twice. You gave up your career. You put your own daughter at risk, I didn't put her at risk, Ryan said quietly. Vale did. I just refused to let him win. He shifted Emily's weight in his arms. And I didn't give up my career. Not yet, anyway. I've got a phone call to make in the morning that's going to be a lot harder than anything that happened tonight. Your orders. My orders. Ryan looked down at his sleeping daughter. I was supposed to report to active duty yesterday. I didn't. There's going to be a reckoning for that. There always is. Let me help, Victoria said quickly. Whatever it takes. Lawyers, calls, I know people at the Pentagon, I can... Victoria. Ryan stopped her gently. You don't owe me that. I owe you everything. Her voice cracked. Please, let me do something. Let me not be completely useless in the face of what you did for us. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded once. Okay, not because you owe me. Because I could use a friend who knows people at the Pentagon. A tired smile. Turns out I made an enemy who knew people at the Pentagon, too. Might be nice to have one on my side for a change. Victoria laughed, a wet, exhausted, real laugh, and she reached out and touched Emily's hair where it fell against her father's shoulder, and something passed over her face, some old grief and some new hope tangled together. She's extraordinary, Victoria said softly. Your daughter. She locked his gun, Ryan. From under a desk. In the middle of a firefight. She's 8. I know. Her mother would be so proud. Ryan's throat closed. He looked down at Emily, at Sarah's eyes closed in sleep, at the child his wife had said would do something amazing one day. Yeah, he managed. She would. He put his daughter in the truck, buckled her carefully, and drove home through the empty 3 a.m. streets. The porch light was on, the way it always was, the way Emily always left it. He carried her inside and down the hall and laid her in her own bed, in her own room safe. And he pulled the blanket to her chin, and he stood in the doorway watching her breathe until the sun came up exactly as he had the night this all began. Only this time, there was nothing left in the dark to keep watch against. The phone call in this morning was every bit as hard as Ryan had feared. And then it wasn't because Victoria Lawson, it turned out, did indeed know people at the Pentagon, and the story of what had happened, the gala, the conspiracy, the hostage rescue. All of it had a way of making a missed report date look like exactly what it was. A father protecting his child against a threat the police had closed the file on. A sailor who'd stopped a murder the professionals missed twice. They didn't court-martial him. In the end, given everything, they didn't even come close. There was a formal review, and Ryan sat through it in his dress uniform and told the truth plainly, the way he told everything. And the officers on the other side of the table listened to a decorated 15-year veteran explain why he'd chosen his daughter's life over a report date, and not one of them being human beings, and most of them parents could find it in themselves to punish him for it. Lieutenant Bennett, the ranking officer said at the end, closing the file. Off the record. If it had been my kid, I'd have done exactly what you did, and I'd have done it faster. He stood and offered his hand. On the record, welcome back. We're glad you're still with us. Ryan shook the hand and said, Thank you, sir, and walked out into the sunlight. A free man with his career intact, and the first thing he did was call his daughter to tell her daddy still had his job, and the second thing he did was drive to her school to pick her up early, because some days you just need to see your kid's face. The months that followed were quieter, but they were not empty, because the world does not simply return to what it was after something like that. It settles into something new. Harrison Vale's trial was the kind of thing that filled newspapers for weeks. The evidence off Cross's phone was overwhelming, and the mercenaries who'd surrendered talked in exchange for lighter sentences, and the whole rotten architecture of the conspiracy came apart in open court. The corporate espionage network, the quiet men who'd invested in a world without Meridian, the agencies and interests Vale had answered to. Some of them slipped away the way powerful people do. But many of them didn't. The financial records led places, and the intercepted communications led further, and by the time it was over, a network that had operated in darkness for years had been dragged fully into the light, brought down in the end by the very thing it had killed to prevent. Harrison Vale was convicted on every count that mattered. Ryan sat in the courtroom the day the verdict came in, and he watched the man who'd held a gun on his daughter learn what the rest of his life was going to look like. And Ryan felt no joy in it, only a deep and final quiet, the quiet of a mission completed. Vale looked at him once across the courtroom as they led him out. Ryan held his gaze and said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The man who'd built his life on being untouchable was going somewhere no money could reach, and that was answer enough. Victoria finished Meridian. She finished it 3 weeks after Vale's arrest, and she did it in the open with a press conference, and her name on it, and her chin high, exactly the way she did everything. And this time, no one came through a locked door to stop her. The encryption architecture went live, and the industry that traded in secrets did indeed collapse exactly as Vale had feared, and the world did not end. It simply became a little harder for powerful people to see what ordinary people wished to keep private, and Victoria Lawson considered that the finest thing she had ever built. But she built something else too, something she cared about more. She came to Ryan's small house one evening about 4 months after the data center, and she sat at his kitchen table, the same table where he'd kept his notebook. The same table where Emily preferred her sandwiches in rectangles, and she told him what she wanted to do. "A foundation," she said. "I've been thinking about it since that night. Military families, veterans, and gifted kids like Emily kids who can do extraordinary things with a computer and don't have anyone to show them how to do it right." She turned her coffee cup in her hands. "The people who invested in stopping Meridian bet everything on darkness. I want to build the opposite. I want to build something that finds the kids who are good at locks and teaches them to protect people instead of hurt them. I want to build something that stands behind the families who serve." She looked up at him. "I want to call it the Sarah Bennett Foundation, after your wife, if you'll let me." Ryan didn't say anything for a long moment. He looked at the table, at his hands, at the porch light glowing through the window. "She would have liked that," he finally said, his voice rough. "She spent her whole life trying to get people to see what Emily could be. She never got to see it herself." He swallowed hard. "Yeah, I'd let you. I'd be honored." Emily, who had been doing homework at the far end of the table and pretending not to listen the way children do, looked up. "Named after Mom. Named after your mom," Victoria said gently. Emily considered this with the gravity of a girl who understood exactly what it meant. "She'd want me to help run it," she said. "When I'm older, she'd want me to teach the other kids the locks." "Then that's exactly what you'll do," Victoria said, and reached across the table, and Emily took her hand, and Ryan watched the two of them. The woman he'd saved and the daughter he'd raised, and felt something in his chest that he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Not the sharp joy of the good days before, but something quieter and more durable. The feeling of a family unexpected and unlooked for forming itself around him out of the wreckage of the worst night of his life. Time did what time does. It moved. Ryan went back to active service because that was who he was, and it was the oath he'd sworn. And he served with the same steadiness he'd always had. And when his tours ended, he came home to a daughter who was growing up faster than he could believe. Victoria's foundation grew into something real. Chapters in a dozen cities, scholarships for the Children of Fallen Service Members programs that found kids like Emily in libraries and on YouTube, and gave them somewhere to point their gifts. Ryan eventually accepted a role there himself, when his active service allowed it, helping shape the security training programs, teaching young people the difference between a man who protects and a man who prays. He was good at it. It turned out the thing that had made him a good sailor made him a good teacher too. The steadiness, the plainness, the refusal to dress hard truths up in pretty words, and Victoria became part of their lives. It happened slowly, the way real things do. A dinner here, a school play there, a holiday that somehow included her, without anyone quite deciding it should. She never tried to be Sarah. She was too smart and too kind to try, and Emily would have seen through it in an instant anyway. But she became something of her own to them, steady and present, a woman who had learned in a data center what mattered and had never once forgotten it. Whether it would ever become more than that, Ryan didn't know and didn't rush. Some things you let arrive in their own time. He'd learned that much. Emily grew into her gift the way her mother had promised she would. She won scholarships, real ones, The kind that made Ryan sit down when the letters came for a mind that could look at a locked system and see instantly the way in, and more importantly, the way to seal it shut. But the thing Ryan was proudest of was not her brilliance. It was what she did with it. Because Emily had learned in the hardest possible way, on the worst night of her young life, exactly what her gift was for. She'd learned it from under a desk in a firefight, reaching through an enemy's own network to lock a gun and save her father's life. She never forgot it. Every lock she ever picked after that, she picked to protect someone. "You know what I figured out, Dad?" she said to him once years later, home from school, sitting at that same kitchen table. "About that night. About Vale." "What's that?" "He had everything. Money, guards, guns, all of it. And you walked in with nothing. Empty hands. And you still won." She looked at him. "For a long time I thought it was because you were braver. But that's not it, is it?" "No," Ryan smiled. "Then what is it?" "It's because he was fighting for himself," Emily said. "And you were fighting for me. And a person fighting for himself always runs out of reasons before a person fighting for someone they love." She said it simply the way she said everything true. "That's why he froze. He didn't have a good enough reason. You did." Ryan looked at his daughter, nearly grown now. Her mother's eyes and her mother's mind, and something in her that was entirely her own. And he thought about the ballroom and the gun in his arm, and the 4 men he'd run toward with empty hands, and the data center and the pinky promise he'd made and kept. "Your mom would be proud of you," he said. "Not for being smart, for understanding that. I learned it from you." "You learned it from both of us," Ryan said. "That's the whole point." There's a version of this story that gets told sometimes in the way stories like this get told: a hero, Dad, a failed security team, a billionaire saved a conspiracy broken. It gets the facts mostly right. 4 men came through a locked room, and only 1 man moved toward the guns. A father walked into a data center with empty hands and walked out with his daughter alive. A powerful man who thought he was untouchable learned that he wasn't. All of it true. But it misses the thing that actually mattered, the thing Ryan Bennett understood, and Harrison Vale never could, the thing an 8-year-old girl figured out from under a desk with the world coming apart around her. The greatest security system in the world failed that night at the gala. Metal detectors, cameras, professional guards, a month of planning, all of it failed, and 4 killers walked right through. And every layer of protection Harrison Vale built around himself failed too in the end. His money failed. His guards failed. His guns failed literally in his own hand. Everything a man could buy to keep himself safe, everything the world tells you will protect you, failed. And one thing didn't. One devoted father who had nothing but a promise wrapped in a pinky and a refusal to ever break it succeeded where every system on earth broke down. Not because he was stronger than the men he faced. Not because he was smarter or richer or better armed. He beat all of them with empty hands for one reason. The only reason that has ever really mattered, the reason his daughter understood and his enemy never did. He had something to protect that was worth more than his own life, and a man like that cannot be stopped. Not by guns, not by money, not by all the guards and gates and clever plans in the world. He will come through every locked door ever built. He will walk toward every gun ever raised. He will not freeze, and he will not break, and he will not quit, because the promise he made is stronger than any oath and older than any fear. And it was made not to a nation or a company or a cause, but to a little girl who left the porch light on. Real heroes are not made of wealth or power. They never have been. They are made of sacrifice and of honor and of love that refuses to count the cost. Ryan Bennett proved that on the worst night of his life, and he proved it not with a weapon, but with a choice. The same choice he made every single morning of his life, cutting a sandwich into rectangles, keeping a promise standing between his child and the dark. The security failed. The systems failed. The powerful, untouchable man failed. But the Navy single dad who never once broke a pinky promise, he did not fail. He never had, and he never will.